Today I'm celebrating my 4th anniversary with my beautiful wife, Elizabeth. Our anniversary falls on a weekend, so we decided to stay at Coldwater Hotel and Resort near Valley City. We have been in North Dakota for a year now, and we love it. We are Chicago natives, and we loved Chicago. But after years of long commutes, high property taxes, and expensive housing, we wanted a quieter life. I accepted a position at a veterinary clinic that specialized in both companion animals and exotics, while Elizabeth was hired as assistant principal at the local middle school. We bought a spacious 4-bedroom home on a few acres for less than half the price of a Chicago townhouse and looked forward to starting over in North Dakota. We finally had time to breathe, so we decided a vacation was the perfect way to celebrate our 4th anniversary. It had been years since we did something that wasn't centered around work or unpacking another box after the move. Lately, though, one conversation kept finding its way back to us: starting a family. Most of our friends were already chasing toddlers around or announcing baby number 2, and Elizabeth couldn't help but wonder when it would be our turn. I wanted those things too. Eventually. I just wasn't there yet. My dream was to open my own veterinary clinic and build a rehabilitation space at our home where I could care for injured wildlife and exotic animals. I loved Elizabeth more than anything, but we looked at timing differently. She saw no reason to keep waiting, while I kept thinking that if we could just get one more piece of our future in place, we'd be ready. Neither of us was wrong. We were just standing on opposite sides of the same dream. Our last fight was 2 months ago. I ended up sleeping on the couch after Elizabeth stood in our bedroom screaming and crying so hard her voice cracked.
When is it my time, Bob? Give me a date when you are ready to have a family? Or do you just not love me enough to have one with me?
I didn't yell back. I rarely do. I just stood there, listening, hoping that if I stayed calm, she'd calm down too. Instead, the quieter I became, the more emotional she got. Every answer I gave seemed to be the wrong one, so eventually I stopped trying to defend myself altogether. I just stayed silent and agreed. It was easier that way. The calmer I became, the more hysterical she got. She didn't tell me to sleep on the couch. I just did. Sometimes a little distance was easier than saying something we'd both regret. The next morning I apologized like I usually did, even though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for anymore. A few days later, we had sex, and it was as if the fight had never happened. That had become our pattern. We never really solved anything. We just found ways to move past it until the next disagreement. That's why I planned our anniversary so carefully. Dinner at a nice Italian restaurant, a movie afterward, a little shopping, then a hotel with a private hot tub. I wanted us to laugh again, to remember why we fell in love in the first place. Maybe after a good evening together, when she felt heard and loved, we could finally have the conversation about starting a family without it turning into another fight. I wanted to give her a real timeline. I just hoped she'd be willing to hear it.
Elizabeth had recently begun filming everything. What started as short school videos for her middle school students quickly grew into an online following, and before long, the camera became a permanent fixture in her hand. She started recording Bob more often, too. He never cared much for being on camera, but if it made Elizabeth happy, he smiled, waved, and played his part. Neither of them realized that the camera would capture more than memories. Friday, August 9th, 2019, would become the last ordinary weekend of their marriage.
We packed our bags the day before, and that morning we had breakfast at Bear's Diner right on I-95, and it was a 4-hour trip, and Elizabeth would probably record all or at least the first half of the trip. I just wanted us to have a good time.
Bob, what's your surprise? Well, the audience wants to know.
Elizabeth held the camera inches from my face while I kept my eyes on the road. No, Elizabeth, not on camera.
Oh, come on. Don't be a killjoy. We're making memories we can watch later.
Elizabeth.
What?
I said no. She kept recording. Seriously, get the camera out of my face. She frowned but didn't lower it.
Why are you being so dramatic? People like seeing the real us.
The real us doesn't need to be filmed every second.
You never support anything I do.
I support you plenty. I just don't want a camera in my face while I'm driving.
It's always about what you want.
No, it's about me asking for one simple thing. She finally lowered the camera, crossed her arms, and stared out the passenger window.
You know, sometimes I wonder if you're embarrassed to be seen with me.
I didn't answer. For the next 2 hours, the only sound inside the car was the hum of the tires against Interstate 94. Elizabeth pulled out the dark romantasy novel she'd been reading and disappeared into its pages. Every now and then she'd smile at something she'd read, but she never looked my way. The Coldwater Hotel and Resort, just outside Valley City, looked exactly like it had online, quiet, elegant, and surrounded by rolling prairie. As soon as I parked and checked in, I told Elizabeth we can go into our room, and I held out the keys. Elizabeth took the room keys from my hand.
I'll meet you upstairs.
By the time I reached the room, the shower was already running. I poured her a glass of wine while we waited for dinner to arrive, hoping the trip could still be salvaged. She glanced at the glass and shook her head.
I'm not drinking tonight.
I didn't press the issue. We ate in the room, talked about anything except the drive, and later spent time together in the hotel's private hot tub. Elizabeth didn't stay in for long, but for a few hours, it almost felt like we'd found our way back to each other. The next morning was easier. We shared breakfast, wandered through local shops, laughed over souvenirs neither of us needed, and by late afternoon returned to the hotel to get ready for our anniversary dinner. As Elizabeth reached for her camera again, I felt the familiar knot in my stomach.
This one won't be in your face.
Thank you.
Video as well.
Yes, Bob.
Hidden inside my jacket pocket was a small velvet box. Inside was a silver heart pendant I'd spent weeks picking out. It wasn't extravagant, but it reminded me of us. Simple, steady, something built to last. I planned to give it to her after dinner. The Italian restaurant glowed with candlelight. We toasted 4 years of marriage, shared dessert, and for the first time all weekend, everything felt normal. The waiter cleared the last of our plates. I reached into my jacket. Before I could pull out the box, Elizabeth slid a folded envelope across the table. She was smiling wider than I'd seen in months.
Open it.
You're pregnant? She nodded, tears already forming.
We're having a baby. Bob.
I thought we agreed we'd wait.
I knew if I told you beforehand, you'd just ask me to keep waiting.
I'm not ready.
What do you mean you're not ready?
I mean exactly that.
We're married.
I know.
We've been married for 4 years.
I know.
So what are you going to do now? Tell me to get rid of our baby?
No.
Then what?
I think maybe we need some space. Maybe we should take a break until we figure this out.
A break? No. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk away because things aren't happening on your schedule.
People had stopped eating. Every table around us seemed to fade away as Elizabeth's sobs echoed through the restaurant. I just sat there, unable to believe that what I thought would be the happiest night of our marriage had unraveled in a matter of minutes. I tried to calm her down, but she kept pushing me and told me to get away from her. I gave her the keys to the car, and I took an Uber back to the hotel. Elizabeth hadn't returned in an hour, even though we were 10 minutes away from the restaurant. I called and texted her, and nothing. I started to get angry. Why am I still getting blamed for everything? 2 hours passed. Still nothing. I called the restaurant, and they said she had left 20 minutes after me. I took an Uber back up to the restaurant as they were closing. I headed back to the hotel, while calling Elizabeth's phone to no avail. I was about to call the cops then. As I walked into the hotel room, Elizabeth was sitting there. I just got so angry I blacked out. The next thing I remember was 2 police officers shouting my name, with guns drawn and my hands being pulled backward, blue and red lights flashing against the hotel walls, cold metal tightening around my wrists. One officer was reading me my rights. I looked across the room and Elizabeth wasn't moving. 17 minutes was what I couldn't get back, and 17 minutes was all it took. I was in handcuffs, being questioned at the police station, and everyone told me that night that Elizabeth was dead. The prosecution says the evidence is overwhelming. My court-appointed attorney says the hotel security footage tells a story. My memory never will. He told me that after I returned to the room, guests reported yelling and screaming. Hotel security was called, but before they reached our floor, Elizabeth and I had gotten into another argument. According to the medical examiner, I stabbed my wife 19 times. 19. I still can't make that number fit inside my head. I don't remember what happened after dinner. Every night I replay the last conversation we had at the restaurant, the sonogram, the tears, the silence. I search for the moment where something changed, where I stopped being myself. Maybe there isn't one. The trial starts next week, and I don't know if I'll ever get a fair one. The newspapers have already decided who I am. The internet calls me a monster. Every photograph of Elizabeth is accompanied by a smiling wedding picture of us, as if to remind the world that monsters can smile too. I loved my wife, but if I loved her, how could I have done something so unspeakable? Sometimes I wake up convinced there was someone else in that room. Not another person, something else. A darkness that slipped inside my head when I opened the hotel room door. It sounds insane, and maybe it is. The evidence doesn't care what I believe. The fingerprints are mine. My DNA is on the knife. My clothes were covered in Elizabeth's blood. The evidence tells one story, my memory tells none, and maybe that's the cruelest part. The only person who knows what happened after dinner, and she was dead.
Bob hadn't been fighting for his marriage for months. He had been quietly walking away from it. Phone records, deleted messages, and testimony from his co-workers revealed he had been having an affair with a woman from the veterinary clinic where he worked. The relationship had been ongoing for several months before the anniversary trip. Investigators later found unsigned divorce papers locked inside Bob's office desk. The anniversary getaway had never been just a celebration. It was an ultimatum Bob had given himself. If the weekend proved they could still find their way back to each other, he would destroy the papers and end the affair. If it didn't, he intended to ask Elizabeth for a divorce. No one will ever know whether that decision died at the dinner table or whether something else happened after dinner. The only certainty is that 17 minutes after Bob walked into room 687 of the Coldwater Hotel and Resort, Elizabeth was dead and the life they had built together ended forever.
17 minutes gone. 19 stab wounds. I love my wife. I really do. Elizabeth knew my heart. I know I made mistakes, and I know I was trying to fix them. I don't believe what they say is true. But if it isn't, then why can't I get my memory back from that night?